The Greater Centerville Historians organized in the year 2000. The purpose of the organization is to preserve the history of the Township of Centerville, Cleveland and surrounding area. Gerald Oneal, Charlie Bauer, Richard Wiegand, and myself, Kathleen Sixel, were the founding members. In 1831, the territory south of Green Bay was sold to the U.S. government by the Native Americans who had title to the land. The consideration was the promise of a reservation in another state. The Township of Centerville was established in 1850. The township had a village called Centerville. The reason for the hamlet's original name of Centerville was, in the days of the Indians, there was a trail along Lake Michigan between Manitowoc and Sheboygan. This heavenly spot was exactly at the halfway mark, so the early white man gave it the name Centerville. In 1849, the village of Centerville was surveyed and laid out in lots and blocks. The village of Centerville was renamed Hika when the Postmaster General informed the village leaders that another Centerville was located in the state. When it became time for Centerville to be renamed, a judge in Manitowoc by the name of Albert Schmidt would take kids hiking. The judge said, "You can't call a town hiking, so why not make it Hika?" Thus, the village of Centerville became Hika. In the early years, Centerville had the vision of becoming a lake port. To encourage ships to dock there, 2 piers were built into Lake Michigan. Many German immigrants arrived by schooners, and the village began to grow. The village had a brick factory, stores, schools, a Lutheran and a Catholic church, mills, saloons, blacksmith shop, and a fire department, and a brewery. When the brewery was built, the settlement began to flourish. But when fire destroyed the brewery, the largest industry, there was no longer a need for the harbor facilities. So ended this chapter of the development of Hika. 2 miles west of Hika, another settlement known as St. Wendel began to grow. It had a Catholic church, a general store with a connected dance hall, and a post office was also located in the complex, a funeral parlor, and at one time a motel. With the clearing of the forest, tilling of the land began. This prompted the exporting of lumber and grains. The farmers of Centerville looked forward to the building of a railway since they had a serious problem transporting their products. In 1873, the Milwaukee, Lakeshore, and Western Railroad was built between the settlements of Hika and St. Wendel and was named Centerville Station. In 1880, Centerville Station was renamed Cleveland after President Grover Cleveland. Cleveland, at that point in time, owes its growth to the fact that the Township of Centerville was a rich farming community, and farmers from miles around would bring products to be shipped by rail or ship. The village of Cleveland had several grocery stores, a furniture store, a funeral parlor, several saloons, Lutheran church, hardware stores, several gas stations, newspaper, photographer studio, several car dealerships, cheese factory, several feed mills, livestock yard, and lumber yards. The biggest business was the Cleveland Co-op, which offered many types of services. With the failing of grain crops, the farmers began dairy farming. With the abundance of milk, another industry began, cheese and butter making. Local cheese factories dotted the countryside. One-room schools were usually built near the cheese factories, so children would have a ride to school when farmers brought their milk. In 1958, Hika, St. Wendel, and Cleveland incorporated into the village of Cleveland. In 1968, the Cleveland Elementary School was built. The Township of Centerville has seen many farming changes, but dairy farming is still the primary vocation. Today, Cleveland is known as the seat of Lakeshore Technical College, which offers an educational alternative to 4-year colleges. An ancient proverb states, When an old person dies, a library burns to the ground. These words were the inspiration for organizing the Greater Centerville Historians. We hope to preserve as many memories as possible.
History get-together, and this young lady can give us more information and introduce herself and give us some directives also as she wishes. Go right ahead, please.
My name is Cathy Sixel, and I want to welcome Charlie Wimmler and also Ramella. And Charlie has come from North Carolina.
Yes.
And he is going to tell us about his father's establishment, and so will Ramella to help him. And please raise your hand when you want to speak, because that way Jerry will have time to get the camera over to you, because we do not want to miss any information. Always state your full name and try to refer to people by their full name, not by their nickname, because these tapes are going into the archives and people don't always know, like I wouldn't know, a nickname. And please refrain from visiting, because it picks up in the video and it doesn't sound nice in the background. Okay, thank you.
Very good.
And I want to welcome everybody else also.
Okay, Cathy, would you like to introduce yourself and maybe where you live at this present time?
I'm Cathy Sixel, and I live at 9716 CTHX, Newton.
Okay, thank you. And you, sir, if you could introduce yourself.
I'm Mathias and live on 1018 Juniper Street, Cleveland.
Thank you. And you, ma'am?
I'm Ramella Albright, and I live at 1102 West Washington,
Very
Cleveland.
good. Very good. And you, sir?
I'm Charlie Wimmler. I live at 129 Aldersgate Road, Jacksonville, North Carolina.
Very good. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you here. Okay, next gentleman.
I'm Lloyd Vogel, and I live at 1109 Elm Street, Cleveland.
Okay, thank you. And we have another gentleman.
I'm Walter Kress, and I live at 350 East Washington, Cleveland.
Very good. And you, ma'am?
I'm Cathy Wagner, and I live at 334 East Washington Avenue in Cleveland.
Very good. Thank you. Ma'am?
And I'm Florence Kress. I live at 350 East Washington in Cleveland.
Thank you. And you, ma'am?
I'm Dolores Kress. I live at 1279 West Washington, Cleveland.
Thank you. And you, sir?
I'm Mervin Chris. I live at 1279 West Washington Avenue, Cleveland.
Very good. And you, ma'am?
I'm Edith Lutzy, and I live at 695 East Washington in Cleveland.
Thank you. And you, ma'am?
I'm Joan Schmidt, and I live at 820 Westview Street, Cleveland, Wisconsin.
Good, good. And you, sir?
I'm Edwin Schmidt, and I live at 820 Westview Street, Cleveland, Wisconsin.
Thank you. And you, ma'am?
I'm Irene Dine, and I live at 1055 Elm Street in Cleveland.
Very good. And you, ma'am?
I'm Marie Pipper. I guess I live at 1051 Linden. The last time.
Last time you checked, huh? Okay, I'll pan up here. You, sir? Back in the background there?
I'm Charlie Bauer, and I live at 9911 Highway C. Newton.
Okay. And you, ma'am?
Helen Piedmont, and I live at N. Eagle 11 County Trunk, LS, Sheboygan.
Okay, thank you. And you, sir?
Wally Baker, I'm the husband of her.
Oh, okay.
Same address.
Same address. And you, ma'am?
Julia Wimmler in Jacksonville, North Carolina.
Okay, thank you. And you, sir?
John Albright, 2123 Woodland Drive, Apartment 1D, Sheboygan, Wisconsin.
Thank you. And you, sir?
Thomas Grodelman, Terrace View Drive, Sheboygan, Wisconsin.
Okay. And we got a gentleman here who's the host of this thing. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Paul Albright, owner of Paulies Palace,
Okay, very good. And your address, Paulie?
1102 Washington.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. And I'm the videographer, Jerry Oneal, and I live at 7301 Rangeline Road in Newton. And I guess at this time, Cathy, you want to start things off here, what we're going to be doing this evening?
Well, this evening, again, we're going to be speaking about Wimmlers, and because Charlie, I think, has a lot of information, because I think there was a little bit age difference between him and Ramella, so she suggested that we have him for our guest, and we're very happy about that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to bypass the tripod for just a little while this evening and concentrate on you folks. And have you got something to present this to start things off, sir? Or who does?
I have a few items on the table.
Okay, I'll let you get those. Would like to present something, and go right ahead, please.
Okay, this is the clock that was in the wall at Wimmler's Tavern when it burned. The fire was discovered at 8:30 in the morning, and that's the time the power went out. About 10 to 10, 5 to 10.
Okay,
This is a mirror that was in my grandfather's bar. It was in the back bar. I think they had a semicircles, and he had a bunch of these lined up. There was a full mirror behind the bar.
Okay.
And my mom had a couple of round mirrors cut from it.
okay.
I'm not taking it off the
So
wall.
this is a section of that larger mirror, is that
No,
correct?
this is a section of, they had like half moons.
Oh,
And they had several pieces of mirror like that.
Okay.
Have them in the shed.
all right.
Years ago, they had bottles or kegs of whiskey.
Yes.
And they bottled their own whiskey, and my father's label was on there.
Okay. Would you like to add something on that?
He bought the keg of whiskey up in Crandon, Wisconsin in 1936.
Okay.
And this was bottled in 1942, so it was 6-year-old booze. Pretty good stuff.
Now, that was a whiskey, is that correct?
Vernie Crest probably drank some of that when he was
You
there.
did, huh?
I don't think so.
This is the place, this is a picture of the original place.
Okay, can you tip it down just slightly to get away from the, that's great. Okay, and the location of, again, this,
It was in 1102 West Washington at that time.
it was not, or what?
I don't think it was. I forget, but it was
Okay.
just county
It was
trunk,
just
double
Wimmler's
X.
Tavern.
Yeah.
Okay, Wilmer's Tavern. And it was
Sometimes known as rough corners.
rough corners. And was there any perimeter buildings around that are kind of, should we say, predominant in the neighborhood? Was there a fire station,
Fire station was across the street.
across the street? Any other business places around the area?
Mathias Dairy was across the street.
Okay,
Thomas Hardware Store was over
Staples.
there. Staples?
Staples?
Staples Hardware
Okay.
Store.
All right, so it was on the corner of some streets then?
Yeah.
Okay,
And
Across the street from Mathias's factory, milk factory, Staples, and then Thomas's hardware store was in back, and the fire department was across the street.
okay, all right. And I don't know if we went over that, do you remember how old that building was? I think we talked a little bit about it, but it might be a good idea to put it on this tape
according
also.
to my mother, the building, there were two buildings brought over, one from across the railroad tracks and one from about a block or so north of here.
Okay,
And Grandpa Wimmler put them side by side, and when my father took it over in 1938, I hope, I'm not sure on the dates, I wasn't there. My father moved it over and he hand dug a basement underneath, and that's when he put the bowling alley in.
okay, yes, sir?
Grandfather bought the tavern, I think, in 1908. And then the buildings were here. He bought it in '08, and he passed away in 1929, I believe.
Okay,
Bernie?
Bernie?
Anyhow, that's when my dad took it over, and then the bowling alley was put in the 30s, right? Late 30s.
okay, now, when you speak of your dad, could you give us his
Harold
full-
Wimmler.
Harold Wimmler,
Was my father.
your father, okay,
He was born on the
okay,
other side of the railroad tracks, in the first house on the left.
good,
Or second house down, second block, I think it is. Not the
Yes.
first house, but the second house down is where he was born in 1903.
okay,
And his wife was born in Mosel, New Haven, Wisconsin.
okay,
She was born in 1905.
okay,
And I'm trying to remember, I think they got married in 29 or 31 or something. I think they were married 5 years before I came along.
And you were born in 30s.
I was born in 35.
So they
Couldn't
got
make
married
me
in
older
30.
than I am.
And they got married in 1930.
okay, very good.
That's when Grandpa Wimmler had a stroke, so they didn't have a big wedding. They got
Yeah.
married by the Justice of the Peace.
Okay, now, let's hear that one. Now, he had a stroke before his wedding?
Grandpa Wimmler.
Oh, Grandpa Wimmler,
Grandpa
okay.
Charlie had a stroke, and when they decided to get married, they didn't have a big wedding or reception because Grandpa Wimmler was so ill.
Okay, very good, okay.
And Grandpa Wimmler's name was Charlie also.
That's what I was just gonna ask. I said,
Yeah.
there's some other Charlie here, and was you
Yeah.
named after him by any chance?
Well, probably. He was a painter before he bought the bar,
Okay.
tavern rather. And he was born and raised on Y, up north of here, where my great-grandfather and my great-great-grandfather had a farm.
Okay,
And they all came over in the mid-1800s from I think near Mosel, Deutschland.
Okay.
Someplace in there.
All right, okay.
And this originally was a livery stable and a hotel. And the big barn was out in back, and you could park your horses there overnight.
Okay.
And there were 1, 2, 3, 4 rooms up topside. And that's where people stayed when they traveled between Milwaukee and Green Bay or Sheboygan and Manitowoc, whatever it was, horse and buggy days.
Okay, now those travelers, what road brought them to this
I
area?
think there was the old Highway 141, which is now, I think, Dairyland Drive.
Okay, all right.
And before my time, almost at the time Bernie was kicking around. Or Marie should know that. She's 90 years old. Love you, Marie.
I am not.
She'll be 90. But that's what I remember of
Okay.
the old days.
Yes.
Now, there's some colorful scenery since after that.
Okay.
After I was born, there's some things that people don't believe happened here. But
Okay,
the dance hall was a popular place to most of these people here that remember that.
okay, very good. And were you involved in the business, or your sister here involved in the business at all as you grew up?
Well, I could tend bar when I was 6, 8 years old and draw a beard. Pretty good, I thought. And it was quite interesting in the old days. Little young boys would come in Dad's Tavern with an old lard bucket. I don't know, quarter, whatever they were in the old days. And they'd ask my dad to fill it up with beer for my dad. And for about 15 cents, they'd get a bucket of beer and they would take it home. Also, young kids would come in and ask for a pack of cigarettes. Nowadays, you can't do that.
No.
But the town was very honest, and everybody knew each other's kids, so you got in trouble.
Yeah,
My mother always found out.
very good. Anything you'd like to add to those things at all?
No, but I learned a lot now.
Okay, anybody else have any questions here? I'll cut for a moment.
My name is Cathy Sixel, and I want to know, there were lots of picnics here. What kind of picnics were they? Just a picnic like Wimmler's picnic, or
Okay,
was it firemen's, or?
question on the floor, and this young lady will try to answer it. Go right ahead, please.
My mom said, my name's Ramella Albright.
Yeah.
I think towards the end, my dad had his own picnics. Why, I don't know. If it was a fundraiser for something, I couldn't tell you. But I know she got very perturbed because when it came, after you added up what was taken in and, spent, Dad never really made much money on the picnics. I think it was just for the village people.
yeah,
to gather
bring
on
about
a
the
Sunday
neighborhood, huh?
afternoon, bring out the neighborhood, yeah.
Very good. Yes.
Yeah.
It was the last Sunday in July was Wimmler's picnic, as I was growing up.
Okay.
And it was also sort of a reunion for my mother's side of the family, the Walters family, because all my uncles would help work out and everything else. And that was always reserved for the last Sunday in July.
Okay.
We also had Farm Bureau picnics
All right.
and fireman picnic. Sometimes later on, after I left here, I think you just had brat fries too, didn't you?
Yeah.
Sometime.
Okay,
And then once in a while they had dances.
okay,
And I remember we had stage plays
okay,
on one. There's 2 stages in the dance hall, and one was like a theatrical stage. And there were some stage plays, and there was a minstrel show when I was a young kid, I remember. And the Farm Bureau used to have meetings in there and talk about new machinery and a new parody and all this that farmers talk about that I'm not familiar with.
okay.
But it's pretty active in the old days.
Mm-hmm.
And as I left there, things just slowed down a little bit.
All right. Were you, I know from the past, people have talked that you were quite a performer in your day as far as agile people.
Well,
And did you perform for any of the occasions here?
I don't recall here, but I think, I probably did at a picnic. I know I tap danced and tumbled at Kiel, or
Okay.
a Kiel picnic, and I was supposed to be a white Bojangles Robinson, but it didn't work out that way. You knew what Bojangle Robinson was. But we used to have a basketball season, and they
Okay.
used the gymnasium for basketball, and I think, Lloyd, you played.
No, I never
You did?
That's all.
And there was a balcony. And,
Uh-huh.
for for those of you who remember Hoodie and Fran Grote, and I think, did Roger Yost play basketball? And talk about being tumbling around. They used to throw me from this balcony down to the deck. Two guys would catch me and throw me back up. So I guess that's where I got my tumbling experience. I grew up with a bunch of nice men.
Yeah, I see that. There was on our previous get-together involving your premises, and we did it by a little communication through the internet, I guess.
I was hoping we'd get good voice, but
We
couldn't
did,
get the voice.
we did.
Yeah.
And there was something talked about with machinery that was on display, or they brought cars or something into the hall. Was that?
There used to be on that side, there was a big part of the wall you could drop down, and you could bring in some machinery. And this
Okay.
had to be in the 20s, I think.
All right.
But because they used to have some displays of equipment and stuff.
Okay.
And we had International Harvester was right in back, I guess, with the hardware store.
Okay.
And I don't remember seeing that, but I remember the door that was sort of a knock it out. It wasn't a door,
On
so
this
half
side.
the wall came down, didn't it?
On this side.
Yeah, right there.
You got something
No,
there?
on this one, on the other side here,
Yeah,
on the west
Okay.
It's
side.
the old building.
yeah.
Okay.
The old building had a wall in there, the whole wall came down, you could drive things up.
Oh, okay. Now that door is not shown on this building, or is it there?
No, it's on the
It's
other
on the,
side.
it's on
It's
the
on
west
the
side.
other
It's
side.
on the west side.
Oh, okay, very good. Yes, sir.
Interesting note, during the 40s, when Willard and Bernie and some of the old timers were in the service, we used to have slot machines.
Okay.
And for you, remember the coins that you got for rationing, the little red coins?
Tokens?
They fit in a dime machine.
Okay.
And some strangers came into Dad's Tavern one time. And boy, they were putting dimes in the dime machine. And they hit the jackpot twice. And the next morning when the Dad opened up the back for the cash, all he had was a bunch of these plastic or whatever they were coins for rationing coins. So it's pretty interesting. Another interesting thing about Dad's business was pretty good in 40 and 41.
Yes.
Well, they started rationing beer.
Oh,
So that it was based on a percentage of beer that you sold in 40 and 41, what you could get in 43 and 44.
okay.
And of course, meat was a premium. And Dad knew probably every farmer from here to Green Bay and, Manitowoc and Sheboygan. So quarters of beef would show up at our house for a keg of beer. And that's how we survived.
Uh-huh.
Of course, my
Okay.
mother had a big garden also.
Okay.
But just little tidbits of
Yeah.
information.
I never knew there was such a thing, and I've heard a lot of rationing of various things,
Oh, yeah.
but I didn't realize beer was rationed, that they had set a,
Well, it wasn't rationed like gas was with a card or a ticket. You just couldn't get that much beer.
oh, okay, for your own.
And if you wanted to get a bottle of Seagram 7, I used to go to Milwaukee with my dad for tap dancing lessons and tumbling and piano accordion, and he would pick up liquor at a liquor store. If you
Okay.
want to get 6 bottles of Seagram 7, you might have to buy 2 cases of rum.
Oh, okay,
And nobody around here drank rum,
yes, yes.
except when the Mexican migrant workers came through. So we had a lot of rum in the basement. And one year they added an extra liquor tax on the whiskey that was supposed to go to the veterans.
25
I don't
cents.
think it ever got
Really?
to.
Really?
I remember I had to paste all these stamps on all these bottles of rum that nobody drank. And if we still had the basement, they might still be there. I don't know. Kind of interesting.
Very
I was
good.
only about, when the war ended, I was 10 years old.
Okay.
I don't know if some of the old timers remember, we used to have prisoners of war here, Germans.
Really? Where were they located?
I think they came out of Plymouth. Where was Plymouth?
Oh, I don't know where they came from, but
But they used to work in the candy factory in the fields.
Okay,
German.
And I
Okay.
remember one time standing on the porch, and all of a sudden sirens were blowing, MPs up and down, sheriff's department, all over. 2 prisoners had escaped. Of course, at the time, I didn't think of it, but looking back, I don't know where they would have escaped to. They're in the middle of the United States. Well, they found them about 10 o'clock at night. Their last name was Klesick. They were brothers, and they were working on a Klesick farm up here someplace.
ah,
And of course, everybody spoke German back in those
Yeah.
And farmer went out and talked to them, and found out they were cousins. So they says, come on in and Fresma, let's eat some supper. And they were having a reunion, and they weren't having an escape. I found that, looking back at it, I find it terrifically interesting.
Yeah, that was unique, very unique, yes. Okay, very good. I'm gonna cut right here and see if anybody can give you some questions to work with. Okay, I got a sweet young lady here. Okay, enough of that. Go right ahead, please.
Okay, Marie Pipper, don't
Yes,
forget.
Don't forget.
I remember Charlie talking about that door that was on the south side that opened up. And my dad had the garage right slanting across, and I remember they had a car show in there. And it must have been on a weekend, because I remember getting up one morning early for that, and my mother made 6 lemon pies. She fed all those salesmen. It must have been in the 40s, I would think.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Marie. Head, please. Identify yourself.
This is Edith Litzy, and I can remember that we had prisoners of war coming to help us with the thrashing time.
Oh, really?
And they always had to be taken back to Sheboygan. I thought they called it the poor farm. Is there such a place that was in Sheboygan where they held these prisoners? It seemed to me as if that was what they called it, the poor farm, yeah.
Okay.
That's
And
what
you
it-
had those helping you on your farm?
By thrashing time, yes.
Okay. Now, as far as the delivery of these prisoners and taking the prisoners back, was it done by Army personnel or what?
No, the person that wanted to have the help, we had to do that.
Oh, you had to do that? Oh, okay.
And we had to take them back to again
Okay,
at a certain time.
sure. Very good. Thank you. You would like to say a few words and identify yourself, please?
David Cole. They mentioned the poor farm. That was, from what I've heard, no, it was in Sheboygan on Memorial Drive, about where the Sheboygan County shop is there now. Right along there, there used to be
In that
a
area.
series of buildings.
Okay.
Now, whether they kept prisoners of war there or not, I don't know, but that's where the poor farm was.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Like to identify yourself, please?
Charlie Bauer. I was gonna ask Charlie, you said your grandfather, did he build the tavern or did he buy the tavern?
But been presented a question, you'd like to answer that? Identify
Charlie
yourself?
Wimmler.
Yes.
As Ramella said, the main bar was near where the old butcher shop was over here. The dance hall was down either on the other side of the tracks or on this side of the tracks. Sometime before 1908, it was moved here. That's when my grandfather bought it.
So what was it before he bought? Was it, who owned it? What was it?
I don't know what it was. I don't know if there was a bar over there and the dance hall was just an open building. I'm not familiar with that at all.
Yes, go right ahead, please.
Ramella Albright. I'm not sure, but if I remember correctly, after the fire, we were doing some cleaning, and there was a shelf in the storage room that said August Herdman on there. So I just wonder if maybe August Herdman
Okay.
had owned it at one time?
Yeah,
Because he
think-
owned a lot of property in the
I
village.
think maybe he did, yes.
So what you're saying,
I'm
in
not
this
sure.
area with your home and business, there was nothing here for a while. And then these buildings were brought in and then it became
Yeah.
your building.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, very good.
I think that's right.
Who has something to indicate? Go right ahead, please.
Charlie Wimmler.
Very good.
As all the people know here, my dad was a fire chief for about 15 years plus. All fire calls came into Wimmler's Tavern.
Okay.
Right above the telephone, which was on the bulkhead, I'm a Marine, so it's a wall rather, was a siren. So the call would come in, fire so-and-so's place, Dad would hit the siren, off they go across the street. And if people were in there drinking beer, say 5 fellows were drinking beer, those 5 glasses would sit there until they got back. If they were gone for an hour, 2 hours, or
Okay.
all day long. And when they came back, Dad would fill them all up and they'd go back to playing cards or whatever they were doing.
That's all.
And at night, my mother does the same thing Ramella does. She's the first one out of the door to open the firehouse up when the calls came in. But all calls came into Wimmler's Tavern.
Okay. And was that a sort of a ringing call type thing? There was no...
Regular the old-fashioned telephone with a button and ringing.
Okay.
Our phone number was Mosul 59, went short, went long.
Wonderful.
And when I called home in 1961 to check on my father, I asked the operator in Los Angeles, I'd like to have Mosul 59, went short, went long. She says, I'm sorry, but I don't know how to dial that. And I said, well, ma'am, get the operator in Sheboygan. She knows how to dial Mosul 591 short, one long. And all these people had, you either had one short, one long,
Yep.
different combinations.
Sure.
10-party line.
Very good.
So the call would come to Wimmler's Tavern.
All right.
It wasn't like a 911 today.
Right, right.
You had to know who, I think everybody knew where Wimmler's Tavern was. Or the operator knew when a fire call went in, you'd send it in there.
Right.
And I remember going out and they'd fight barn fires. Barn fires lasted all day long. But a chimney fire, maybe an hour or so.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget, those glasses weren't touched. Those were sacred
Those were
places.
sacred places for those gentlemen. Very good, very
There's
good.
also another thing that I, thinking back, you could tell almost within 15, 20 minutes, my dad's tavern, as I was growing up, not when she was growing up, what time it was. About 10 o'clock in the morning, the farmers would be coming in because they took their grain to the feed mill, and there were 3 feed mills in town.
Oh.
It took an hour, 30 minutes to grind the feed, so they'd come in for a quick beer or something. And in those days, they'd bring their 6-year-old sons with them. And zwei Bier here, Harold, which means 2 beer. And my dad had a big mug for the farmer and a little mug for the son. And they'd leave. Then about 11:30, people from the nursery would come by for a quick one. They're going home. It was called Pipper's Nursery. And they'd come by, and 11:45, the people from the gray mill, they'd stop in. Then Gordon Pipper would be going home for lunch, so he'd walk by at 12 o'clock, have a brandy and water, go home, eat lunch. On the way back, he'd have another one, so at 12:45, you could tell that time. And you could tell within 15 minutes
Yeah.
who was there. Then around 5:15, the Kohler workers would come in.
Okay.
And that lasted until 6 o'clock, because then they had to go home for supper.
Uh-huh.
But it was almost a routine thing.
Sure.
Curly from the Ford company would come in for his beer, and it was just routine every day.
Very good, very good.
Cookie call.
Cookie,
Harold called, 5
Yeah.
o'clock, on the way home.
But it was taverns in the old days were neighborhood get-togethers for the men folk until supper was on the table, usually.
Okay, all right.
We have an aunt who traced their heritage back to 1400, and she said they have some taverns in their family. I said, well, I have a tavern in mine. And she says, well, what year? I said, 1908. She says, no, if it isn't 1700, it doesn't count. But back in New England in the 1700s, each town had to have a tavern, which served food for the traveler.
Okay.
And they had a hotel combined with it. The locals couldn't drink the liquor there after 6 o'clock because that was for the travelers.
Okay.
This, I learned this from one of my aunts,
Oh.
my wife's aunt, really. And it's pretty interesting. And if you look at the neighborhood bars, and it used to be in Sheboygan, Manitowoc, and here, the same people hung out in the same bar. It was
Sure.
a get-together.
Sure.
And folk would swap their tales and stuff.
Right, very good.
We lost those nice things, I think.
Right, right. The camaraderie thing.
Yeah.
Yep. Very good, thank you.
Okay.
I'm Cathy Sixel, and I want to know, in your facility at one time, did the ladies have to stay, like, at the wall, sit down at a table, or were they always allowed at the bar? And before you referred to Curly, but I don't know who Curly is, so if you would identify who Curly is.
I can't even
please.
remember, what's his first name?
Someone here will identify himself, and he's got a couple of questions to answer. Go right ahead, please.
Charlie Wimmler. The Curly I referred to earlier was the auto mechanic at the Ford garage. It was, Umsted's garage was Gilbert Ulrich.
Okay.
I don't know about the ladies. When I was born in 35, and I know there were some good ladies that came in, and we had some good singing. And I think I learned to dance with some of them when I was 6 years old. And I remember some of the guys dated girls that skated, and they had these big flaring skirts. And I guess I learned some stuff from guys like Verney and Willard, because I used to flip their skirts up to see what was underneath there. And it was blue on the outside and gold on the inside. Was you one of the skirts? But I don't remember the ladies being left out.
They were always allowed to sit right up there?
During my age, yes.
Okay. Did you ever have any spittoons or such things in your tavern there at all?
I think there were some. There were the old steps, and then there were some platoons when the bar was a single bar.
Okay.
Because the bar used to be against the west wall. It was straight, and then, I don't know what year they put in a U-shaped bar. But it was, when the bar was single, when the horses did their split. I don't know if I told you about that.
No, right ahead.
Good. My best man at my first wedding was a Richard Mayer. His father, Lewis Mayer, was a horse dealer. And they sometimes enjoyed a little bourbon and water and beer. And one day, 2 horses showed up inside my dad's tavern.
Oh, boy.
With riders on. And my mother had waxed the floor, and the next thing, the horses' legs went out. And they had one heck of a time getting those horses out of the tavern. But some weird things went on in Wentworth's tavern that I wasn't privileged to. But there were some good times there, as the old timers can. I think I was probably fed the bottle when I was young in the bar by some people. You know, Otto Reinemann, I think, used to feed me bourbon and milk or something. Put me asleep, stuff like that. Marie probably rocked me to sleep once in a while. Paddle my butt is what you did. That's all for now.
Now, I got a question pertaining to your dad's responsibility as the fire chief. When a fire did come in, what was his true responsibilities about handling a fire?
Well, sometimes
start
he
to
drove the
finish.
truck, he just directed traffic.
Okay.
Some of the old firefighters I was too young initially, and then when I was old enough, I was off to college. But I think he conducted the meetings or got people in to teach the men how to use the equipment. I remember they had an old Pierce fire truck, open air fire truck, had a leak, and Pierce was made down in Kenosha. It was winter, and they had to drive the truck. He had to drive the truck down to Kenosha to get the tanks filled up. So my mother drove with him, and it was, I guess, snowstorm, what have you. They were wrapped in blankets, and as they're going through Sheboygan and all the other villages, I guess they were quite a sight, and he'd blow the siren every now and then. And they finally made it through Milwaukee without stopping at Fiebiger's bar, I think, and got it fixed and brought it back.
Okay.
And but I remember they always had fire meetings,
Okay.
and we used to have Isaac Walden. Was it Isaac Walden? Fish and game, yeah.
Okay.
Meetings in the hall too.
Okay.
But he was active in the fire department with the coaches, and fire department coaches and Tavern Keepers Association.
Coaches, what is that all about?
He was a baseball coach.
Oh, okay.
For the Cleveland team here in
Okay.
the 30s. And then during the war, there was no ball team. Then in 45, the team got back and coached that for several years too.
Okay.
But
He was still with us in '56, because I have some pictures of him
yeah,
here.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
Kathy will help you out because Bobby.
Okay. Very good.
When I think, oh,
Go right ahead, Kathy. Can you?
Kathy. I'm Cathy Wagner.
Thank you.
When I think of when I think of Wimmlers, I think of Harold Wimmler and being the coach of the team in Cleveland here for the Manitowoc County League. My husband played in that for a lot of years.
Okay.
And first we went to the games and played the games, and then we came back to the backyard over here, and then we had to replay them.
Oh, yes.
You know, if you had done this and if that had happened, and then, you know, how different it would have been and all that kind of stuff. And I have a few pictures of that.
Okay.
And also, when we're talking about something new, the Manitowoc Herald featured Cleveland in 2002, and I have Paulie here, who is drawing a tap beer.
Okay. Why don't we just take a little bit of picture of that too? So it's part of the newer history.
Okay, this is a new one. Is it okay laying down that way?
Sure. That's
Okay.
fine. Okay. Would someone want to read that caption? I'll cut right here.
Right. Owner of Paulies Palace draws a tap beer.
Okay. Young lady here who just can't wait to get talking here. She'd like to introduce herself.
Ramella, Albright. Cathy talked about her husband playing on the team and my dad coaching. Now, I don't know, something about a franchise. I don't know if Dad had to pay for one or whatever, but my mom tells a story. My dad came home with his shoes full. And Mom says, Harold, where are we been? I sold a franchise. Yeah, I suppose you sucked up that money too. No, but it's right here. I still can remember his name. I was right here. So the team was still in his heart, but he didn't have the money from selling the franchise. I don't know where it went.
Oh, no.
I can't remember. I don't remember. It must have been when I was a kid when that happened.
Oh, and there was one thing about Coach Wimmler, he always had a flashlight.
Identify yourself, please.
Cathy Wagner.
Yes.
The one thing I remember about Harold is that he always had a flashlight in his back pocket. If it was daytime or if it was nighttime, there was always a flashlight ready.
Ready for use, huh?
Ready for use.
Very good, thank you. The gentleman here has a point to make, and he's like to identify himself, please.
Charlie Wimmler, referring to my father's flashlight. Once in a while, he'd go to church. Well, he usually went to church on Sunday. But the flashlight would be on, and if you looked up in the top of the church, you could see this light going back and forth. He'd say, Harold, your flashlight's on. And he'd go to wear it to church. Everywhere he went, he had it.
It was always there.
That's right.
It was always there.
And it had a red tip on, just in case you
But,
needed it for directing
there's so many
traffic.
funny things about talking about overindulging. He never ate breakfast.
Oh, he never ate breakfast.
No. He'd open the tavern at 10 o'clock or something. But one night, I guess he was extra hungry, so he got to the kitchen and saw some flakes there and put some milk in it, ate. Next morning, he got up and he asked my mother, he said, what kind of cornflakes were those? They really sudsed up. They weren't cornflakes, they were soap flakes. My dad ate the whole bowl of soap flakes. Weird things happen in the Wimmler family. I don't think he ever ate breakfast after that again.
Cereal.
Very good. Now, as far as your dad, was he always a big man as far as weight-wise, or did he
From my
try a
perspective,
diet
he
or
was
two?
always big, yes.
Yeah, he was big.
He weighs usually around 350 pounds.
Really?
He went on a diet. Well, I think in his younger age, he probably went around 200, then he slowly increased.
Yeah.
But he
Well,
went on a
maybe-
diet, and last time I had seen him alive, he was down about 280. And he didn't look well to me, and then he went back up to 350 when he died.
My goodness.
Interesting note here at the funeral, since he was active in Tavern Keepers Association, baseball, and firemen, they had 2 tavern keepers, 2 baseball coaches, 2 fire chiefs.
Really?
Both fire chiefs probably weighed about 140 pounds apiece. The coaches probably weighed about 180 pounds apiece. The tavern keeper weighed about 250 pounds apiece. And when they got together, they put the firemen at my dad's shoulders. So they almost dropped him coming down the ladder at St. Wendel's Church, because the fire chiefs had the heavy part of my father's
Oh my
body.
gosh, yes. Oh,
I had a picture, I should have, did you, the 600 pounds of fire chief?
I remember that. I remember
I've
that.
got the picture at home of 2 fire chiefs.
Yes.
The fire chief from Newton and my dad getting together, and it was like 2 bellies just bumping
Right,
together.
right.
It said 600 pounds of fire chiefs. I had another picture of my father, and I can't find it, where it was 1 ton of tavern keepers. My dad weighed 350. Mutch Bauer from Campbell Fort, Wisconsin weighed about 460 or 550, I guess. Between the 2 of them, they made 1,000 pounds. And then there were 3 other guys were lightweights at 300 pounds apiece. And it said 1 ton of fire of tavern keepers.
Oh my.
It was one of the
goodness.
conventions that I probably tap danced at many years ago.
Okay, very good story. Thank you.
That's all I have right now.
Thank you. Would like to say a few words?
Marie Pipper of Cleveland, Wisconsin. I remember Harold too with the flashlight in the back pocket, but you had to give him credit. He had the bowling alley, and he had baseball, and he had basketball. He started everything like that.
Uh-huh.
And I remember the old hall. They had spelling bees in there, and language, and arithmetic.
Okay.
Like a Chautauqua they had in there one time.
What was that word again?
Chautauqua, that was like what do you say, a doctor show, or what do you remember where they had all years ago they sold all kinds of stuff.
Seltzer.
That was, what was it? I can't-
A medicine show.
Yeah.
Medicine
yeah.
show. Okay.
And I remember I worked for Loretta. I must have been about 14 or 16 in those days. Heck, you didn't need a license. And I remember I had it clean in the tavern too, and that one part was brass. And the worst part was I had to clean those damn spittoons. They were terrible. And that time I remember the dance hall was here and there was like a little alley in between the dance hall and the bar and the house part. And there was a old toilet on the other side.
Okay,
That's a long time ago.
long time ago. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Miller.
And where do you live, please?
I live in Kiel now, but I grew up in Cleveland.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
David Cole lived here in Cleveland over in the Hika, Centerville area.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Identify yourself and your address.
Melvin Uni, and I live at 871 Linden Street, and I've lived in Cleveland all my life.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we got a gentleman here who'd like to identify himself, and he's got maybe a question or some information.
I'm Willard Mathias. When talking about Harold, when I came back from the service in 1946, Harold says to me, "Well, Willard, we need some firemen. Now, would you want to join the fire department?" So I did, and I was with the fire department until I retired years back. And but he was one that had his fingers in everything in the village, more or less, like I said, the fire department, baseball, anything to promote our village, which you have to give him a lot of credit for. I mean, there hasn't been another man in this whole village that I don't think has done as much as Harold Wimmler has. And as far as recreation, basketball, you name it, he had his fingers in it.
Okay.
And which I really appreciated, because on a lot of Sunday afternoons where us young fellas didn't have nothing to do, we could always go. It was below zero, but it was maybe about 10 above in that back room back there where we practiced basketball. We'd sure have a good time doing it.
Okay.
At least it was something for us to do
Sure.
always by at Wimmler's Tavern. And when we'd get done, then we'd go in there and we'd have 2 dips of ice cream for 10 cents, and you add another nickel, you got the chocolate one time.
Okay.
So we'd always have one of them and a soda. So we would probably spent a quarter that afternoon, which was our entertainment for the whole Sunday.
Yeah.
And so I always appreciated Harold, and until the time I went into service, he was always there. And I know there were times when those steps weren't quite wide enough when we went out, and I was only 18 years old. But, I mean, he was always such a good fella, and I remember, like, the fire department having the picnics there. In fact, in 47, I remember, and in 48, I was in charge for the fire department of running the picnic for the fire department over there. And that was including everything. It was hiring the band, which would be probably Romy Gaz or whoever was the most popular at that time. And I'd go to Milwaukee and buy all this equipment for the bingo,
Oh, yeah.
and other things that were involved in that picnic that day. So it was held at Wimmler's on a Sunday afternoon, and we always made good money for the fire department. And I know the last year I was with that was my buddy Vernie and I were both on that committee.
Okay.
So the next day we had to go count the money. So I went to work that morning. I'm at Kohler. I was working at Kohler at that time. And that night we were going to count the money, and Vernie still wasn't sober enough to count the money. that was back in, I think, 1948.
I was one of the members of Harold Wimmler's baseball team,
Okay.
1940 and 41. And one day we went up to Francis Creek, and a couple of the guys got hung up someplace in the tavern. We got there with 8 men, so we didn't know what to do.
Yes.
So finally Harold says, I'll play right field. I was the center fielder. He says, you come over about 30 feet, help me out. Well, I said, you have to bat too? Oh, that's all right. He went up there, they walked him 3 times.
Very good, Vern. Nice story. Good job. Thank you. To say a few words, go right ahead, please.
I'm Irene Dine, and talking about Harold promoting the fire department. When he took us to Greenbush
Charlie and I and the Grotagood twins and Alan Bondi, and there we entertained, and he brought us back home again
Wonderful,
for
wonderful.
their firemen's picnic.
Yes. Well, very good. Thank you.
Marie Pippers. I remember Harold too. He taught me how to drive the car. He worked for my dad in the garage.
Okay.
And that did time I could have my pickup, any old used car. So we found a coupe, and then he put me behind the wheel, and here he was sitting, and his feet were out of the window on the right-hand side. Now drive. Now go backwards, go forwards, go around the corner. That's how I learned to drive the car.
And you're driving still today, right?
Right?
Very good.
Just as bad.
Just as bad.
Or just as fast.
Mary, you had your hand up. Would you say something, please? Identify yourself, please.
I'm Mary Miller.
Thank you, Mary.
I remember when I was young, your dad had outdoor movie theater.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And that was awesome. What did it cost? A nickel?
10 cents.
10
10
cents or
cents.
something?
Wonderful.
And he would rent the movies, and he
Sure.
would put the benches out in the park. And there was a big crowd of grown-ups and kids coming to that. That was on Wednesday night or something like that.
Saturday nights, and they always ended with a cliffhanger.
Yes.
So you had to
The
come
one
back
guy
the
was
next
with
time.
a bat. The bat.
Very
But
good.
that was very nice. I
Yeah.
mean, we didn't go to Sheboygan to movies,
No.
you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
I remember that too, I forgot
he
that.
was really good thinking of the village, I think.
Very good. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate that one.
Well-
Add on here a little bit. Go right ahead, Marie.
You're gonna need a beer pretty soon.
Go right ahead, Marie.
Marie Pipper, I remember we had our wedding reception in there, and boy, some of the women that, I won't say who, two women got so darn loaded they forgot to put all the olives on the table. I'll never forget that. Oh, and Harold played. He had a band too.
He did too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cleveland Nighthawks.
Cleveland Nighthawks.
That's right.
Okay. Anybody? Okay, I'll be right there. Thank you, Mary. Sir?
I'm Charlie Wimmler. In reference to Marie's comment of Cleveland Nighthawks, the night I was born, my dad was playing a dance band someplace, a dance gig someplace.
Yes.
And there was a snowstorm, I guess, and the only way you could get to St. Nicholas Hospital was walk down the middle of the street to get into the hospital. But then he gave the band up, and several years later, John Kolb had a hand accordion, not a piano accordion, hand accordion.
Okay.
And he needed a drummer. Well, my dad was a drummer. He taught me how to drum.
Oh.
So he said, Charlie, go with John Kolb and play dance. We played dances, wedding receptions and stuff. And when I went off to college, he needed a drummer, so my dad went back to drumming with John Kolb, and they called themselves the Two Fat Dutchmen. And that lasted for a while, and somebody else took over the concertina or something.
Okay.
I don't know what happened after that. But yes, he did have the Cleveland Nighthawks, and they played all around, I guess.
Wonderful.
And when I was born, he was playing. That's it.
Very good. Thank you very much. Young lady, you'd like to say a few words?
I'm Cathy Sixel, and I think that Roland played in that band, right? Edith Roland Lutze.
Okay.
Say, maybe you can tell us a little more about it, Edith.
Very good.
I'm Irene Dine, and when the Cleveland Nighthawks were going, my half-brother lived out here, and he was their piano player,
Okay. Do you remember what his name was?
Tony Shinkowski.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. That helped. And you had something to say?
Well, I know that, I'm Edith, let's see.
Very good.
And my husband played the concertina, and I know he played with Harold many times, but I don't
Okay.
have a single picture of it.
Okay. And your husband's full name was what?
Roland, let's see.
Okay. Thank you. Young lady here who would like to say a few words?
Not gonna say my name again. I remember that Walter Dickman played in that one too.
Okay. All right. Now, was he a larger person also? Do I remember him right?
No, he was kind of stocky and tall.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And do you remember what he played?
No.
Okay.
I can't remember. I can't remember everything.
Ah, we got a young lady back there. You identify yourself, please?
her stepbrother was also my uncle, and he played the piano.
Okay,
And
okay.
the more beer he drank, the better he played.
Isn't it? Yes, sir.
Wally Pedro.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to add a little bit to Tony also. He was playing the piano in the tavern here, and somebody pestered him to play a certain song. He wouldn't do it. He got no notes. Finally, he said, "Here we got him." He put him upside down, and he played it through. He was a tremendous player.
No.
And I'm honest, I'm here. None of you people talk about Loretta.
Say it.
Both Windmers did a lot for town, but Loretta too, her later years,
Yes.
all these ladies to town or to a doctor, they did everything, you know. And if you wanted to know somebody that died 30 years ago, ask Loretta.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Very good. Thank you. We can maybe answer a few more questions. Go right ahead, please.
Charlie Wimmler, in reference to my mother and what she would do. She had a book, and she had everybody's wedding, births, baptisms, and deaths and funerals in there. And it goes back quite a few years. And that's what he said, like Marie said, if you want to know who died, who was born, and who got married, she had it someplace. She also kept track of anybody who got fined in the city courts for drunken driving. This guy paid $450. This guy, she had a little bit of a diary of the village of Cleveland on what happened, what didn't happen.
Okay. Wonderful.
She was baptized Lutheran, but she didn't practice the faith that much. And I went to a Catholic school, and she'd haul all the nuns around. And I always thought that was quite incidental. My mother not going to be a church Christian type lady, but she had a heart of a Christian.
Yes, yes.
And
Very good.
at her funeral, I think we had 3 nuns came in that I hadn't seen in 20, 30 years, showed up. So yeah, she did kind of thing. I have that same habit, keeping track of things myself, and my wife gets a little bitter about that, but that's okay. Dad had a system. He liked to tell jokes, and he would write them down in a book. But his penmanship was so bad he couldn't read them when he wanted to tell them. So the book was no good. When my dad was born, he spoke no English.
Okay.
And there was across the street was a doctor. He spoke German only.
Okay.
Across the street was Dr. Reiner.
Yes.
And he had a son called Adrian Reiner. And Adrian Reiner could not speak any German. And Adrian Reiner became a dentist and had a dentist upstairs in the tavern.
Okay.
And Adrian was my godfather.
Ah.
And upon my father's death, he wrote a beautiful letter to my mother, something like, this ends the era of 2 young boys, one that spoke New English and one that spoke New German, but became very close friends for the rest of their life. And
Very nice.
pretty nice, pretty
Yeah,
touching.
very good, very good.
But Dr. Reiner was got his medical degree in Germany, and was a horse and buggy doctor.
Uh-huh.
And he made his own herbs from around the city here or in the country.
Really?
He was a real old-fashioned doctor.
Okay.
And probably similar to my dad. They said when Dr. Reiner died that he probably saved, probably was owed thousands of dollars because of his generosity towards the farmers. They said, don't pay me, just remember me at butcher time. But you know, when they made the sausage and stuff.
Sure.
Similar to what my dad would do with the exchange of beer. Here's a keg of beer here for a half a side of beef or something.
Yeah, very good.
Pretty good.
Very good. A little bartering there. Thank you.
I'm Irene Dine, and talking about my half-brother playing the piano for
Yes.
that song, that happened to be the 12th Street Rag, and that just came out at that time.
Ah.
And another thing about Harold, I worked across the street in the hardware store, and I always knew he was coming because he was always whistling.
Very good. Thank you.
Marie Pippert. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
I remember too all the picnics that they had on the west side, downstairs below the hall. They had a closed like a gate, and they could open that up, and then they could serve from there onto the counters.
Okay.
And I don't remember what year, but that one year they had it was always Wimmler's Picnic, called Wimmler's Picnic. And I remember that was the same night when Hoodie Groth was killed. He came from the picnic here, was loaded, and he went up to work at Alaska, and he was killed up there. I can't remember what year that was, though.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
David Cole. When we came to Cleveland, my wife is from Sheboygan Falls and I'm from the Howards Grove area.
Okay.
We were married and we saw this house in Cleveland that we thought we'd be interested in. So we came to town to take a look at it, and didn't have any idea where it was, so we stopped at Wimmler's Tavern to see if we could get some directions. And we said, well, it's on, the ad said Lincoln Avenue. We had no idea where Lincoln Avenue is, but of course Loretta knew where it was, so she headed us off in that direction. But Wimmler's Tavern was our first stop.
And you came to Cleveland. Very good, thank you. Question pertaining to some transportation facilities here. Go right ahead, please.
Ramella, all right. I can remember when my brother was stationed, I think either in Texas or when you get your wings in Florida. My mom never flew when she wasn't going to fly. And she picked up the Greyhound bus and picked her up right in front of the building where the fire hydrant is now. That's where they picked her up. And they must have taken Ellis into Sheboygan.
Okay.
And she took the
Went
bus
all the way to
there.
Texas with the bus? Oh.
Yeah. She went through the Ozarks, and this one lady says to my mom, "Oh, we're at the Ozarks, just beautiful at sunset." Mom says, "I don't know, I was sleeping." You know. When she had, I was the youngest to be born, and when she had us kids, she always 10 days in the hospital.
Uh-huh.
And when I was born, there was a lot of babies born in that September, that 12th, and that days. She said, "I want a private room." Well, they brought somebody in, and she put up such a stink. She said, "This is the only vacation I get. I'm taking my full days, 10 days, and I got a private room coming." They had mothers in the hallway. But my mom had a private room. That was her vacation. That's the only vacation she took.
Very good, thank you.
Some of my mother's running things. My dad, as I said, knew every tavern from Green Bay to Milwaukee. And dropped my mother off and myself off for either some kind of lesson or something. And we're supposed to be picked up at a certain time at a certain street corner. Well, he didn't show up. This was in Sheboygan. She called the chief of police and said, "I'm looking for a fat bartender driving a 46 Hudson. Can you find him for me?" And they found him.
They did?
She could get things done that other people couldn't. She was a tough lady.
Oh, very good. Well, now, you had a certain abilities and talent and that type of thing. Now, your parents must have saw something there that they kind of helped you along. Could you tell us about that?
I'm told it all started with a jukebox when I was about 5 years old.
Okay.
Somebody would put a nickel in the jukebox, and I would grab a Coke bottle and spin around and play it like a trumpet. And somebody told my dad that, "Harold, Charlie's got some good talent there. He should be a tap dancer." So for the next 10 years, I begrudgingly took tap dancing lessons. And I started tumbling. I had a good back. I don't know what I had to do with tumbling, and then when I was about 10, 12 years old, I started to become a piano accordion player. I could play 2 songs real well, and that was about it. And that's how I got to be tap dancing. When I got to college, I went to school at La Crosse State Teachers College. I became a gymnast.
Okay.
That was my varsity sport in college.
Wonderful.
And the only thing I can do today that closely resembles gymnastics is drink a beer upside down in my head. And I'll show it to you after we get done with this meeting.
You can do that yet,
Okay.
Recorded for
After
posterity.
After I graduated from college, I became a Marine aviator.
Okay.
And I flew fighters for a couple of years, and then I became a helicopter pilot.
Okay.
And I was given 3 all-expense-paid trips to Vietnam. And somebody asked me, "How is it to be a helicopter pilot in Vietnam?" I said, "I know exactly how a duck feels during hunting season."
Very good, thank you. And the young lady who'd like to say a few
I'm afraid
words.
I'm gonna forget.
Go right ahead, please.
Ramella, all right. Getting back to my brother about his career and stuff.
Yes.
If it would have been for his mother,
Uh-huh.
he probably wouldn't have had it. Because he came home and told my mother he was going to join the Marine Corps. And my mother says, "It'll never last. You're not tough enough." And when he went out for basic training, he said to himself, "I'm going to prove her wrong."
Uh-huh.
And if So that's why he ended up doing what he did for the last umpteen years. But
Wonderful,
my
wonderful.
mother forced him.
There's
Yes.
a different version to that, too. I was at college, and all the people I knew in Cleveland had been in World War II, and during Korea, I had gotten a deferment because I was in college. And I thought that there was never a Wimmler in the armed services, so I thought they should have one of us in there.
All right.
When I'm in college, I wrote my dad. I said, Dad, I'm joining the Marine Corps. I got a letter back. You got to join the toughest thing in the world. Can't you join the Army or the Navy? How you answer that? Well, okay. Well, the headquarters of the Marine Corps sent me an invitation to flight school. I had never flown. Dear Dad, I'm going to become an aviator. You son of a... You can't kill yourself fast enough for a car. You're going to fly. So I went off to flight school, and I don't think he was too happy. I became a fighter pilot. But in 1958, I was back in Pensacola, Florida, retraining for helicopters. And I called my father. I said, I'm going to become a helicopter pilot. And I think, related to what Willard said, being a fire chief and all that, he says, you know, that's good. You can save people. And I think that's what it is, way of life, helping people and saving people.
Yeah.
And he died 2 years later.
Very
That was the last thought he gave me, that
Yeah.
I could save people.
Save time. Sure.
And,
Wonderful.
Yeah, it was a struggle. He didn't, he had a 6th grade education, and
Okay.
my mother had an 8th grade education.
All right.
So, but I think for some reason, it seemed like the schools were better in those days because they did pretty good for themselves.
They did. They really did. You said something there. Very good. Thank you. Big call here. Go right ahead, please.
Talking about their education, because of the ethnic background of being German, and I don't know if Vernie did this or not, but did you go to German school during the summer? After the normal school year was out,
Yes.
both my father and my mother went to, you did?
Yeah.
German school
Oh,
for
really?
6 weeks to keep the language of German, reading, writing, and speaking.
Really?
And we lost that now. The only good German speaker left, I think, would be Marie and Willard if he's still talking German.
Not much.
Yeah,
Very good.
but that's little things.
Very good. Thank you.
Dear Cole, that German school that you were talking about, was that related to the church, or who ran that, or whatever?
Okay. Good question. Thank you. Would like to identify himself?
Willard Mathias. What it was at the Lutheran church up here during the 6 weeks during the summer.
Okay, the Lutheran church up here. Could you give me a name,
St.
please?
John, St. Peter.
Okay, thank you.
Lutheran church, you had to go to summer school for 6 weeks.
Okay.
And I remember going up to Pleasant Hill one year. And I didn't like it up there. So the following year I went down by Leitwitz.
Pussy had that house there?
Pussy, there was
You
a
were
house
Pussy?
down there.
Okay.
We had a young minister that came in, and he'd teach you. At that time, it wasn't no German no more, but I know my brothers like Merlin and Elroy, you had to learn everything. Everything was in German at that time, but when I went, that was in English already. So,
Okay.
but you still had to go 6 weeks to school during the summertime when everybody else was on vacation. You had to go to school
Really?
again.
Okay. Now, that extra schooling, that was paid for by your parents or somebody?
There was no paid. You didn't pay nothing.
Oh, really? Okay.
That was through the church.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
I went to German school too at Pleasant Hill. And I wanted to say something about Charlie. He was a little tyke like this, and I went to Milwaukee with Loretta many a time. And we have a picture of you where you're crowned the king of tap. You're about 4 years old, and you don't have that along, do you, Cathy?
No, I can't find
Yeah,
it tonight.
but we have a picture of that. And talking about Dr. Reinhardt, I worked for him too. Boy, I really got around, huh? And I remember going up the stairs out of the tavern, you went to the north. And you could also go from the outside on the east side, and boy, that big steps. And I remember Loretta had a beautiful plant up there. They call it a weeping bride. It was white, and it really wept. Don't suppose you have that anymore. And Loretta and I always talked German.
You always talk German. Very good, very good. Thank you. Lady here who has something to indicate, go right ahead.
Cathy told me, I'm Ramella Albright. Cathy told me to show this. This is my mom's 5-year diary, and this is all the listing of people who had died throughout the years.
Really?
I tried to keep it up, but I couldn't. She's got like people from 1932, 1946 in there.
Oh,
Yeah, and it's falling apart, and it still settles arguments in the tavern. When some people die.
sure, absolutely. That's wonderful. That's great. She
I tried
must have had a certain logistics in her mind to keep this going, huh?
It was something for her to do.
Huh.
You know, I remember Charlie talked about a book. She did weddings, but I forget one of the people involved in the weddings of that year. Oh, said to my mother, "Oh, you just want to take those to see how many months before the first child came along." But there were so many. But I forget. There were so many different weddings those years that they had in the dance hall, and I think most of them ended up to be 50 years.
Yeah.
A lot of them. Like Claire Litzy and Elmer, they wanted to celebrate their 50th anniversary the same place they got married. So, of course, Wimmler's wasn't here. So they had it here. They had an open house, but that was their wish to have their celebrate the 50th, where they had their wedding.
Okay, very good.
That's it.
Very good, thank you. I'd like to say a few words and identify himself.
Hi, my name's John, Ramella's son. I just want to know like the story behind when a newspaper called my grandmother wanting information about Uncle Chuck being in the war.
Okay, very good, thank you. It has been brought to our attention, and maybe you can help answer it, please.
Ramella Albright. I can't remember the year anymore, but anyways.
1962.
1962.
9 May.
My mother got a phone call from the Milwaukee Journal. She hadn't known that he had gotten the helicopter he was flying was shot at, and he had gotten hit, but he was fine. But when he was a kid, my mother would get up early in the morning in the wintertime and help him deliver his papers. Milwaukee
Sunday.
Journals. The Sunday Journal.
Okay.
And because he was a delivery boy of theirs one time, they looked in their archives when he came along, so they dropped a journal off at every house in the village of Cleveland because he was on the front page.
Really?
Yeah. But when he delivered the journal when he was a kid, my mother would get up, deliver the journal, and probably come home and clean the tavern before my dad would get his buns out of bed. His grandma would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning all the time and clean up.
Okay, well, now that we're talking about your mother, what was her maiden name, and do you know how they might have met? Okay.
Charlie Wimmler. Her mother maiden name was Walters, and she lived up near Haven. And the story I get is that my dad used to deliver meat from Pipper's Market, I think, horse and buggy.
Okay.
And they met somehow. He was delivering food out that way, and they met. She was a farmer's daughter.
Okay.
And that's how they met. At least that's the way my mother told it.
All right.
And I guess then he became a mechanic, auto mechanic, and he was sent to he was sent to Chevrolet school someplace to become a salesman. And I guess then my mother and dad got married, and that's when grandfather died, and that was the end of the Chevrolet business for my dad, I guess.
Okay, so then he diverted his career a little bit?
Became a tavern keeper.
Okay, very good, very good. Yes.
My dad would take my mom to basketball games because they have away games and home games. So they make her carry the ball so she wouldn't have to pay to get in. My dad was real extravagant. Here, Loretta, carry the ball. You won't have to pay. You're part of the team. So she'd go and see the basketball game. She never had to pay because they'd make her carry the ball. She was equipment manager.
Thank you very much.
I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, Loretta.
Yeah, Loretta, yes.
Mrs. Harold Wimmler worked at the H.C. Prying Company. I'm pretty sure it was in the bakery department before she was married.
Okay, all right.
And she said she worked at Molvis, that's right, too.
Okay.
Before.
She worked at Ramella Albright. She worked at where Marie said, but she worked in the fruit department at Prangies, and there was an elderly lady that come in, and she would say, "My son Brian," who's Brian Donlevy's mother. And that's how Brian got his name.
Our brother, Brian.
Brian, yeah.
Oh,
Then
okay.
she quit working at Prangs and she cleaned houses
Okay,
for, I think, before she met my dad.
all
She
right.
was also cleaning houses. And she told a story that this one house where she was cleaning, the lady, she had like Sunday off, and the lady says, I want you home by midnight. And she says, why? Well, you're a young girl, you shouldn't be out after midnight. She says, anything that can happen to me after midnight can happen to me before midnight. But she babysat, I don't know if you know, Judge Buchan from Sheboygan County. She babysat for him. And she was in an auto accident in Sheboygan. It wasn't really bad, but the gal had a wreck of a car and wanted to sue Grandma. So Grandma went to court, and I sat in the back. The gal never showed up. And I think it was Judge Buchan. I'm not sure if that's their correct name, but she stands up next to her lawyer and goes like this to the judge. I said, geez, don't do that. You know, I thought, any minute the judge is going to say, why are you doing that? She was going to say, I paddled your ass when you were a little kid. I'm going, let's get out of here.
Thank you.
Many years.
Is he ready?
Charlie Wimmler.
Yes.
Germans and Jewish people had some differences when I was a kid. Because my mother says, if I'm a Yut, no, I'm not a Yut, you know. But a man by the name of Joel Fiedelman was an attorney in Sheboygan and came out, wanted to set up a business in Cleveland to handle some of the farm deal. And my dad would rent an office above the tavern. So he introduced himself as Joel Fiedelman, and my mother says in German, Bist ein Jud? Are you a Jew? And Joel came back in German and said, Ja, ich bin ein Jud. And my mother said, Schrecklich, aber schrecklich, bad, very bad. And to the word that not going to do very well here. And I think Joel told her, let me worry about that. And he was a very nice man, and he became a pretty nice lawyer out here with the farmers and local people. He joined the Chamber, he'd come out once a week, joined the Chamber of Commerce, was even president of the Chamber of Commerce one time. Well, when the tavern burnt in '74, he heard about the news on the radio, so he had been, it was the 50s when he started out here, I think. And the way I got to see it is, he and my mother were standing there watching the tavern burn with tears in their eyes, and the next day he died. And my mother told me, he says, you know, I think his heart was broken when the old tavern burned. It's just one of these little stories that
Sure.
kind
Sure.
of, and he was a pretty nice man.
Very
And
good.
he convinced a lot of the old stubborn Germans that the Jews weren't really that bad after all.
Right.
Disabled.
Thank you.
What?
He was disabled.
He had one leg shorter than the
Yeah,
other.
he was disabled and had walked with a limp, but
And could you give us his name one more time, please?
Joel Fiedelman.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That was very good.
Hang on.
Was that a movie camera?
Yeah, I took that years ago. I don't have it centered correct. Can you see? I don't know how to get it any lighter.
Now, they're demolishing the building after the fire? Is that what we're seeing?
That's about it. I don't know why this is done.
Now, what are we seeing on the top floor there? What was?
That was my room when I was a young teenager.
Okay.
That was one room there, and there was another room to the right. That was a part of the old hotel room.
Okay.
Yeah. What year was that?
1974.
Verdun, we hired Verdun to tear the building apart. I think the fire department or the police department said we had it because it was a danger because kids would come in there no matter how they had it.
going to stand up because I can't see around Willard's head.
Well, let's let him lay on the floor. Willard, you're too tall.
I thought about it, but this is good.
That lower white framed area there.
That was our dining room.
Oh, that was the dining room, okay. And we're looking from what street? Can you tell me that?
What's the name of the street?
Juniper.
Juniper.
Okay.
That roof you see on the right is the barn where the horses back in the early 1900s would stay.
Okay, very good.
Became a garage then.
The wood was hauled away and it was taken to a pit west of here where Bondi's has all those new houses in there. And Francis Schmidt used to own that. And we put all the wood up there and we burned it. The tin roof went down. There must be where the slack was. It was broken. 27 years old. That's part of the kitchen that just put in there. That white window you see back there, that's part of the dance hall. Way back.
Now, was the building totally gutted inside that it couldn't be saved, huh?
The dance hall was gutted and the basement was shot. The floor collapsed in the dance hall.
Okay.
The house probably could have been salvaged, but they said whenever it got rained or damp, humidity, you'd always smell that
Oh.
there was a fire there. There's no way you'd get away with it.
Yes.
And my mom at the time was, what, 62? She was in her 60s and she didn't
69
think
years old.
she could do it.
Okay.
Hi, Alice. I think it took about 2 days, 3 days, something like that, before they got done with the whole building.
Now, as far as the heat provided in that building, was there separate stoves or separate furnaces, things like
We
that?
had one furnace. The dance hall wasn't heated, but at one time they had must have been a gas furnace on
Okay.
the north side of the building that would heat the hall. Well, when they had dances, people generated their own heat.
No, there were some hot water blowers in there.
Were
We had
there?
a- we had
That's
an old
right.
Stoker.
Okay.
An old stoker. There was a furnace down in the back corner. Oh, at the dance hall?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I remember
In the early
going-
days, yeah.
yeah.
Then my dad put those blowers. Didn't really eat well.
The building was, what I see, totally made of wood.
I tried to edit it decent, but I got that in by mistake.
Okay.
Now that's when the whole building was down. This is how we started building this building. And which
Okay.
was a good idea because we had, one of our drains had broken and they didn't know which way it went, you know, from where the break was. So I brought this film out, and it got to the part where it showed how they laid the pipes in the ground before they had the building up. And thank God they only missed it by a foot or two. I'm gonna fast forward this, I don't know if we'll
Sure.
see. 'Cause this is, they got most of the building now and they're going on the inside now.
Okay.
I don't know how,
Looks like the floorboards.
yeah, they're digging in the basement there.
Boy, yeah.
No, they didn't dig the bowling alleys out.
No?
We took them out manually. We were selling them for workbenches and whatnot. I have no idea what that is. Okay, yeah. Okay, the house over there, we're still on the north side of the building. Now there's the front. 1974.
That was where the dentist had his office up in there.
Yeah. The window to the left is the dentist's office. The middle room was where they had the x-ray machine, and the room on the window on the right was a bedroom. It's unreal how they pick it up and they drop it and they break it and they pick it up again. There goes the hall.
Oh. Wow.
Now they had to take a ball to break the porch, and all the stone and cement from that porch is under the ball diamond, where the softball diamond is now. To create that, what do you call it, effect there?
Yeah.
That's where our porch went. They had plans of doing that years ago, and they dumped it down there and covered it with earth. And that's what was left after you got done with it.
Now that building in the background, was that a library?
That's the barn.
That was the barn.
That was the barn.
Oh.
Donnie Dine took that apart. He wanted the boards. He said that's the last barn he's ever going to take apart. Yeah, that's it.
That was it. Wonderful.
Now that's where the bowling alleys were and stuff.
And who did the movie taking here?
Pardon?
Who did the movies?
I did.
You did?
Can't you tell?
You did-
Amateurs.
You do a nice job.
My mother thought that I thought we could build on the old basement, so I spent 3 weeks cleaning that
Oh, no.
basement out with a broom.
Hey, please.
I'm Cathy Sixel, and I wanted to know how many people knew what building this was. It's in the village. Did you, Willard?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Edmund?
I thought it was the old firehouse, Hika.
No. It's a shed that was at the Cleveland Co-op, and the picture came from Herman Boney. He was a manager there one time in the early years. Did you guess it, Wally? Did you remember it? No? Maybe it was torn down or something, you know, in early years already. I don't know.
I think that was the shed that was standing back where the John Deere, Lloyd Wool. I think that was the building that stood where the John Deere building is now, in that area.
Okay.
It was like a storage shed for the co-op.
Okay. Very good. You obtained this picture from, Cathy?
This was from Ethel Boney, and Herman Boney was a manager at the Cleveland Cooperative at one time.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. We're on the same page there, kiddo.
Okay, Marie Pipper.
Yes.
I have to tell a funny story. Down in the bowling alleys, they had a lot of cats. And Loretta had the wash machine and that right off of the bowling alley. And here she was sorting the wash in a great big pile. And all of a sudden she threw that all in, and lo and behold, there was a cat that went along into the wash machine. We almost died about that poor cat. And the only thing she ever said to me in English was like, he said, "Peddling your ass again, huh?" I got to hear that today yet. She and I must have been the only ones up that early in the morning.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you. Ending here to the story, and it was about your mother. Go right ahead, please.
Ramella, all right. You talk about my mother being affiliated with the fire department. For many years, she answered the phone, blew the sirens. You knew when it was a barn fire because she knew how to blow it just right. And for many years, she did open the door, even after she no longer had the business. In fact, when she was 88, I finally told her she couldn't do it anymore, because she still was going over there.
Now, she was doing what at the fire station
She would
now?
run over and open the fire doors so that when the firemen came, the fire
Really?
trucks were
Ready to go?
ready to go. But I said, Mom, at 88, you gotta quit. She did.
Very good. Very good. A stalwart lady. Thank you.
Charlie Wimmler. The work that my mother did with the fire department, they made her an honorary fire chief.
Oh, really?
In 1 year, all the firemen got a beautiful red shirt with the fire logo on it.
Yes.
And they gave my mother a pair of red bloomers with the logo on it. But she got a badge that she carried in her purse as an assistant fire chief.
Isn't that great? That was fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. I would like to add a little bit to it.
As being an ex-fireman, when a fire siren would go off, I'd be come running over there, and here where Loretta was. Doors were open, ready to go, and she'd tell you where to go, where the fire was, and if you didn't know, the person, she knew, and that's how you got to go to that fire, because she knew everybody and where they lived.
Okay.
And at the time when I first come out of the service, then I didn't have to drive the truck, but later on, when we got the 1946 Ford truck, then I could drive the truck, because that other one wasn't good enough to drive that one. But anyway, she would be there in the morning, let you, or in the evening, let you always know where to go, and how to get there, what roads, and
My gosh.
which was something that I knew 90% of the people, but the ones I didn't know, she knew.
She knew.
So that was the way she was in those years.
Total dedication, believe me.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'd like to add that Loretta always made horseradish and silts. And that was always a thing at our house because it was just delicious. It was Don's thing to eat, not mine.
Okay. What did they sell this at the?
I don't know. Did you sell it or did she give it away?
Gave it away. She gave it away.
She gave it away. And she made a lot, right?
Oh, okay. Wonderful. Thank you.
You ready? You're not on your knees. Ramella Albright.
Thank you.
My mother made silts for the fire. She made silts for the fire department for the annual meeting
Okay.
and for the Christmas party. And I still do it to this day. And that's one of the
Very
few
good.
recipes that,
We're
well,
past.
I can't say recipe, it's a tasting thing, because
Okay.
you can't write up the recipe. You can write the ingredients.
Yep.
And then I watched her make it,
Okay.
because she never had time to teach me. And I got pretty lucky.
Good.
So I've been doing it now
Wonderful.
for the last 7 or 8 years.
Wonderful tradition.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Somebody else is gonna have to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do
Thank you.
it.
Go right ahead, please.
Mathias.
Thank you.
I have a little remembrance of Loretta too. I think if you went around in a lot of people's homes or in the bars, she always made posters out
Really?
of this plastic canvas. She'd have oodles and oodles of different colors, and she'd make different patterns.
Really?
And some of them she'd sell, right? Yeah, and I wonder how many dozens she made in her lifetime.
Yes. Yeah.
A lot.
Thank you. Very good. Right ahead, please.
I'm Cathy Sixel, and this evening I want to thank the Wimmler family for sharing their wonderful memories, and particularly Charlie for taking time in his vacation to share this with all of us from the village and out of the village.
Okay.
And we covered that, and we were also fortunate that Ramella had the film to show us. What a wonderful thing to have in your
Yeah.
attic, and also the artifacts that
Yes.
she found in her attics, that she took the time to get them out and share them with us.
Very good. And I think this evening, since everybody seems to have a little bit of a German in them, I'd like to have everybody give their name one more time and maybe say something in German, like Auf Wiedersehen or whatever you'd like, and we'll test how everybody does in their German speaking. Go right ahead, please.
I'm Cathy Sixel, und ich will Danke sagen zu die Familie Wimmlers.
Very good. Thank you, Kathy. And identify yourself, please.
I'm Willard Mathias. Auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you. Very good. And who do you have here, please? Back there.
Melvin Uni and Mathias. I'm way off in a German too, really.
Yeah.
Okay. And you, sir?
Charlie Wimmler, and ja, wohnt ganz gewiss in Paulies Spuck.
Thank you, sir. And you, sir?
Lloyd Vogel, Und das war eine schöne Nacht, heute Abend.
Very good, very good. And you, sir?
Walter Kress, good night.
Good night. Very good. And you, ma'am?
Cathy Wagner. Auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you. Very good.
And Florence Chris. And Max Good.
Ah, very good.
Lars Chris. Max Good.
Thank you. And you, sir?
Ronald Chris, ich bin ein Dummkopf.
I don't understand.
Edith Lizzie, ich habe alles mein Deutsch vergessen.
And you, ma'am?
John Schmidt, auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you. And you, sir, back there?
Charlie Bauer. The only German I know is Bauer.
And you, sir?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, sir.
Edmund Schmidt, auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you very much. And you, ma'am?
Irene Dine, ich kann nicht viel Deutsch.
Very good. And you, ma'am?
My real name is Maria Dorothea. I was baptized that.
Okay.
Und es ist jetzt schon my bedside.
And you, ma'am?
Mary Miller, next birthday.
Next one. Very good. And we'll pass over here. We'll catch you first, dear.
Ramella Albright, auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you very much. And the young lady back here?
Alice Mathias, this is the only thing I know. Gehst du rein, your shorts and don't.
And we'll go to the back row here, please. Identify yourself.
Thomas Gerlemann und Marie hat schon recht.
Wonderful. Okay.
John over 9.
Julia Wimmler and Daka Marie Pipper.
Wonderful. And you, sir?
Wally Pavey, verdammter Hund.
And you, ma'am?
Helen Hegel, guten Abend.
Thank you. And you, sir?
David Cole, ich sprechen Sie Deutsch.
And myself, Jerry Oneal. I have, as you can tell, Oneal doesn't relate to German, but I think I heard something, mach schnell, du kleiner Schatzi. Anyway, I'd like to have Cathy sign us off, please.
Okay, ich will noch ein was sagen. Wir haben jetzt auch ein Bier zu trinken. Geht da draußen und trinken wir ein Bier zusammen.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
My birthday's on Friday. How many weeks?
Anybody got a calendar?
You going on Monday?
Yeah, the second, 13th. The 13th of September, and it'll be in LTC. Oh, October. LTC I'm gonna try.
13, it's a holiday.
Oh, yes.
Flag Day, Veterans Day, Columbus Day, somebody did something.
13th of October, right, Cathy?
13th of October.
Okay.
Second Monday.
Okay, and that's at L.
TC.
Very good. Thank you, Cathy.
And I'll have to let you know what room. Oh, for Pete's sake. Oh, my.
Wonderful job, sir.
Oh, Prost.
Prost.